I hate legal stuff. Not because it's not important. It's pretty much the most important thing. It's because it's way beyond me. I don't even understand what half these words mean. I never understand about the cases. So we have to go out and find experts, and you can't find anybody better than Bill Jacobson, founder of the outstanding legal insurrection and, of course, Cornell University law professor. Bill, what is Moore versus Harper, and what am I supposed to care about this for?
Well, you should care about it because it was a big controversy, particularly in 2020, which is to what extent can judges alter or interfere with the rules that the legislature has set for elections, federal elections, because the Constitution says that the legislature of every state makes those rules. And as we saw in Pennsylvania and many other states, a lot of those rules were changed. Now, Pennsylvania wasn't at stake before the Supreme Court. It was North Carolina redistricting. But that was the issue. To what extent can the judiciary get involved? And surprise, surprise, a majority of judges said, yes, judges can get involved. That judges traditionally, have had a say on whether laws comport with the Constitution, interpreting laws, and that is no different when it comes to election laws. So it's a huge point which may or may not embolden other state courts to get involved.
Okay, is this good? Is it bad? Okay, it clearly puts more power in the hands of judges than state legislatures. And I'll tell you, Bill, on the surface, I don't know how I feel about that. Should I be happy?
Well, I'm not sure. I think this is one of those things where I think the Constitution was pretty clear that it's the legislature of the state that sets the rules. So I don't know, this is a deviation from that. I think whether people are happy or not is going to depend on which party or which ideology controls the state court. And that's the unfortunate reality here. So in North Carolina, this case before the Supreme Court is a perfect example. Many of the justices said we shouldn't even be deciding this because what happened is the North Carolina ruling came from a Democrat majority state Supreme Court. It then flipped to a Republican majority, which said, we're going to do a new map. So the map that was before the Supreme Court, the issue no longer really existed. So this is a perfect example. Whether you like judges getting involved or not, from a political point of view, is going to depend on who controls the state court. And so the left was thrilled at this, but they're not going to be so thrilled when the new Republican North Carolina Supreme Court issues rulings that may not be favorable to Democrats in terms of how elections are run. So I think this is something where the court shouldn't have even decided it. I think it was Justice Thomas who wrote the main dissent, joined, I think it was by Alito and Gorsuch, and basically said, we shouldn't even be deciding this. We're talking about something that no longer exists, which is a decision by a court under a different map. We should just kick this thing out of here. And I think that's what they should have done. They should have not decided it because now it's really a mishmash. We don't know what the guiding principle is going forward. There's no standard set forth in the opinion. There's no guidance as to how far state courts can go. So this is something where they should have just left bad enough alone and waited for the right case to make that decision.
Speaking of something that's ugly and confusing, redistricting, state districting, how they draw these lines, especially the congressional map lines. Every time I look at one of these gerrymandered districts, and both sides do it, where you have some weird sliver here and then a cutout there, and it's just obvious they drew it so that Democrat or Republican could stay in office forever, I always say to myself the same lame question you've probably heard 1,000 times. How is that legal? How is it legal that this stuff goes on? It makes us look like such a banana republic.
Well, yeah, I mean, in New York State's a perfect example. In New York State, I spent part of the year in Ithaca. When I first joined Cornell, it literally was a district that looked like a snake. It went from college town to college town in upstate New York to keep Maurice Hinchey, an extreme far-left congressman, in office. It then got redistricted judicially and actually had some fair districts. This time, the Democrats in the state legislature, which determines the districts, got very piggish. and they basically eliminated 4 to 5 Republican districts by slicing and dicing, and they ended up getting overturned by the state Supreme Court. So this is terrible, but state legislatures determine these districts, and it is subject to review. But that's our system, is that it's up to the legislature of every state. Now, some states appoint commissions to do it. Of course, that sounds nice and neutral, but it's not always so neutral. But, it's really a mess. It is a mess.
Yeah, I've seen that firsthand. Well, no, we have a commission. Oh, yeah, I know exactly how that goes. All right, tell me about COUNTERMAN versus Colorado. What is it?
Yeah, that had to do with something called true threats. It was a First Amendment case, which is essentially cyber stalking. It was repeatedly, hundreds, if not thousands of times, sending some woman harassing messages, which unfortunately takes place a lot on the internet. And the question for the court was, the Colorado statute required that these be objectively threatening messages to prosecute somebody. And the Supreme Court said, by a majority, I think it was 6-3, or 7-2, said that in order to prosecute somebody for that, you have to not only show that it is objectively threatening to the recipient, but that the sender had some reason to know that it would be threatening. And so that was the standard. And of course, a lot of people are upset with that, because now you have to prove some sort of subjective intent by the sender. And they did say that recklessness would be enough, but they've made it more difficult to prosecute this sort of cyber stalking, cyber harassment, because 2 things now have to be proved: that a reasonable person would consider the messages threatening, and that the sender had reason to believe that these were threats.
Are you tired of watching your beloved nation fall prey to the insidious grip of communism? The Anti-Communist Manifesto by Jesse Kelly is the ultimate guide to fighting back against this destructive force. Discover the shocking truth about communism infiltrating our education system, corporations, and even environmental movements. Unmask the true agenda behind groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and learn how to protect the United States from the most malicious enemy. With extensive documentation of past atrocities, you'll see the undeniable danger posed by this ideology. Arm yourself with knowledge and join the fight to preserve the American way of life. The Anti-Communist Manifesto, a new must-read book from Jesse Kelly. Get your copy today at jessekellybook.com or wherever books are sold.